Good evening, everybody. My name's Kevin Graham. He's Russell Boyce, and this is Tuesday night Screamacelica. It's 6:30, so what else would you do at 6:30 on a Tuesday night? So all you guys who are listening to BBC Scotland, Radio Clyde, Real Radio, is Real Radio still a thing? I don't know if Real Radio is still a thing or no.
I don't think so.
Is it? I don't know. Is it New Heart FM or something like that, or Magic, or we play 70s cheese every hour on our FM or something like that. Russell, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's good to be on Screamacelica. Week 3 already, Kev. We're racing through them, man.
And we didn't think we were going to get past week 1.
I know. We've surprised ourselves a wee bit.
I know. No. Now, Russell, go and tell us where were you today? Go and tell us.
So I was on a Pakistani news channel called Indus News. It was an email out the blue, Kev, you know. I thought it was maybe a bit of a wind-up, and I thought, I'll just go with it, and we'll see what happens. And then, before you knew it, this morning I was speaking to a producer on the phone telling me to comb my hair and that, man. I was like, cheeky bugger. And then I just went with it. It was all good. And I realised I've got a completely different voice that I didn't know anything about, Kev. This completely telephone manner just came over me, man. So I suppose I couldn't go full on Boyce to people across the globe. I think it's only fair that I try and speak in relevant English. Apart from Screamacelica, of course.
Is it true that they did call you a sports journalist? Russell Boyce, sports journalist.
Brilliant, eh? If I'm on again, I'll put a pen behind my ear, man. You know what I
I
mean?
know. Unbelievable. I mean, that shows you the reach a Celtic State of Mind. that you're getting a news channel based in Pakistan asking you to come on to speak about Liverpool against Wolves. Not even Celtic. which is utterly bizarre as well.
I don't think it's the Chapman stream that's doing it, so you never know, man. You never know.
Oh, right. Let's get on with this. Let's get on with this. The Wolves. So, this week, we're jumping in the green and white DeLorean, and we're going back to August 2002. The 14th of August 2002, to be exact. Celtic were on the back of the 2 in a row. Martin O'Neill had just won the championship for 2 in a row. We were going for 3 in a row that season. Yep. And we were looking to get back into the Champions League. Now, these were the high salon days where we only had to play one qualifier. And we went into the third qualifying round, and we got a team called FC Basel from Switzerland, who were a team that are backed by a Swiss pharmaceutical company. And I must admit, after the taste of the Champions League the previous season, I thought it was a pretty good draw. I had a look at that Celtic squad and went, we can do this. I reckon this squad were going to make a dent in Europe. I thought we were really I thought we were equipped to go to make a dent in the Champions League. We were unlucky the previous season. They were unlucky the previous season when we got 9 points. So of course we wanted to actually go into the Champions League again. So we turned up against Christian Gross's Basel, and the Celtic view that's from that week. I'll hold it up here. It's got Chris Sutton on the front, looking green, mean, and moody.
Oh, very, very nice.
That's the Celtic View photographer done well that day. I mean, if Chris was looking for a photo for the Nick's back of his book, that's it there, eh? That's the one that he should use, eh?
That's actually the album I went for later. I think it's Chris Sutton's Greatest Hits I went for, Kev. You know what I mean? That could be the front cover.
It's very George Michael, isn't it? That is George Michael. It is very George Michael. Anyway, they're saying in this game that Celtic wanted to play Vilnius, who Bal had put out. I remember going to this game full of confidence. And within 4 minutes, within 2 minutes, we were 1-0 down. What do you remember about that night, Russell?
Loads. I was so deflated. It was unbelievable. I think, like you, we felt there was a real unjust about our exit in the Champions League. Obviously, you start, splitting hairs, and you go, that Nicola Marusso dive basically cost us a place in the next round. 9 points. Was more points than we expected to get in the group the year before. It was a really, really good achievement, and I couldn't wait to get back to the Champions League. I think as well it was mixing it with the big boys again. It was quite amazing. That was the era, you were talking about Didier Gata, a press conference in that first Champions League campaign, and O'Neill was saying he was a £29 million player back then, and that was 20 years ago, and I thought FC Bal, very much like yourself, good draw, comfy draw. We'll deal with them, no bother at all. And like you say, right from the first 5 minutes, boom, brought back to reality. And actually, what transpired that night was actually symptomatic of a lot of Celtic away performances, particularly in that competition, over the next, you could say even up to now almost, you could argue. And I always, I remember we were all taken aback, and I think it just shows you can never underestimate the champions of another country too easily. Do you know what I mean? You can't do that.
The scouting report in that Celtic View says that they were a very handy side, and when you look at their squad, they were an experienced side. They had guys who had played in Turkey, had guys that had played in Germany. It's typical. I think it's typical of maybe the Scottish arrogance. When you don't know the name of the team, you just go, we should beat them.
Yes.
We've never heard of them, and there's going to be easy. And that turned out not to be the case that night. So Martin O'Neill lined up with his normal 3-5-2 that night. So you had big Rabin goals, Johan, Bobo, Big Hughes, Momo Silla, Lennon, Lambert, who was replaced by Jackie Mackey after 77 minutes, Stan Petrov, Bobby Petter, who was replaced with Steve Guppy in 56 minutes, Sutton and Larsson up front. Now,
so the lineup I'm looking at says Ulrich Larsson was playing.
That's the away leg. That's the away leg that we're going to get to.
Right.
That's Ulrich Larsson played in the away leg. So that's a home leg. Now, when you look at the goal that we lost after 2 minutes, it's an absolute horror show by both Bobo Baldy and Hughes Valharn. And the boy, what's his name, Christian Jimenez, sort of miskicks the ball, and it ends up like trickling into the net. I remember being in the stadium that night, and the stadium went silent as soon as that goal went in. We were like, oh no, here we go. Here we go. And when you actually have a look back at that time, I think like that was the moment I sort of realised that Ulrich Larsson, we'll come to speak about him later on, Big Valharn was a liability at that level. He wasn't as good. I think injuries had a lot to play with it as well at that level. But when you see a couple of goals that we've lost round about that time, and on the run to Seville as well, which happened after this, you go, Big Valharn was not the best.
I would argue though as well, I felt a wee bit sorry for him because he always seemed to play in the left of the three, and I never really thought he was as comfortable playing on the left of the three centre-halves. You know what I mean, Kev? I always thought they're all predominantly right-footed, and I think you're looking at me, Albie and Bobo, and going, well, they're definitely not playing on the left-hand side of the three. And I kind of felt he was maybe just, we definitely could have been doing with a left left-sided centre-back, which I'm guessing was why then Lewerson was brought in to sort of give that balance. Because I think you're right, Valgaeren probably wasn't as good in the long run as what he was that first season. The first season, I mean, he was something else, to be fair. We looked like we got a snap. Remember, he'd had an amazing Euros before we'd signed him for Belgium. He'd looked right good player as well. And he lived up to that first season. And then I think the second year, he just, once the level's gone up against the opposition, like you rightfully point out, and you put him at the left of a three, it was a tough gig for him at times, wasn't it?
I think a lot of the times playing in the back three in Europe, we were exposed because our wing backs played higher up the pitch, and O'Neill tried to sort this in the return leg by going to a back four, and not the return, and the away leg with Ulrik Larsson going to left back and Johan Mjällby at right back. Now, not the most two mobile full-backs that you'll ever get in your life there, but we'll get to the away leg after this. So Henrik Larsson pulls us back into the game after, I think it was 4 minutes again. So they score, we equalise, a quick equaliser, so game's back on. Chris Sutton ends up 54th minute, puts us 2-1 up. But bottom line was Bal were the better team that night. Bal played us off the park, and even at 2-1 we were lucky to be 2-1 up because Bal were impressing all over the pitch. The two Yakin brothers, Yakin and Murat Hakan were impressing. They had the couple of wee Argentinians that played for them as well, the goal scorer Jimenez. They were a quick, pacey side who were well coached, well drilled, and knew what they were good at. And I remember being completely surprised by the quality that they actually possessed.
Again, I think you've just summed it all up. That's because in the eyes of the Scottish media or the Scottish football fan in general, we've never heard of this mob. They must be rubbish. They'll get a tonkin. I mean, the Yakin brothers really stand out for me. I think if my homework says right, Murat Yakin by then was in his second spell at Bal. I think he'd been to Turkey, I think he might have played in, or Germany, and then he came back to Bal. So he was then vastly experienced centre-half, the captain, and I remember Hakan Yakin just being outstanding. He just ticked all the boxes. He looked a fantastic player. I know we'll touch on the away leg, but I remember his through ball in the away leg, the reverse slide rule pass was just outstanding, out of this world. And it was two South Americans they had up top, wasn't it?
Jimenez,
and I can't remember the name of the other one. No, I'm not sure.
Come to us.
And I remember they'd done something like they were saying, obviously the commentators wait for you to be getting, humped in the middle of the match before they start going, Jimenez scored 30 goals last year for Bal. And you're like, nobody mentioned that, in the build-up to the game. They were a very handy side. And they had a decent keeper as well, who'd made a couple of good stops over the two legs as well, from what I've looked into as well, and from what I remember. But I think, Kev, you're right. We were taken aback, but that was, that's just our ignorance to it. And, you deserve to be taken aback if you don't actually, do your research, you know what I mean?
Definitely, and it looked like Celtic had done their reset. The other Argentinian striker was Julio Rosso.
Yes.
Julio Rossi. Now, I'm having a look at the scouting report here, and it was what was the scout's name? John. Well, it was Stephen Sullivan that wrote the piece in the article, and it was John O'Hare who went to watch Bal, and he says that Murat Yakin was very similar to Alan Stubbs, taking the ball forward and playing long raking passes. I just remember him being a brilliant, decent defender who scored in the return leg as well. But he looked like he should have been in a Def Leppard tribute band. He had that sort of wannabe like Shaggy Perm type thing. No like yours. No like yours. No. Yours is far better than that. But this was one of the nights where Europe. We had built ourselves up that much for getting into the Champions League. Getting a bit of a tonkin even though we were 2-1 up at the time, of the Swiss champions was somewhat an eye-opener for us. It was maybe a leveller bringing her back to earth. Then Didier Agar's replacement that night was a guy called Momo Silla. Now, I've said his name, and I'm sure everybody that's watching us in the comments has got the Momo Silla song going through their heads. And you will not get it out your head all night now that we're going to talk about Momo. Silla had came into that side because Didier Agar was injured, and he was playing as the right wing back. The game before, we had bet Aberdeen 4-0 the game before, and he had a great game. He scored. What I remember about this night as well, he was absolutely fantastic as well on the right hand side. He was a maverick type player. He didn't know what he was going. He didn't know what he was going to do. He was like a snake.
He didn't know what he was going to do next at times as well. I think he had that. I'll give you a wee comparison. Different position, right? But a bit of canoe about him. Kind of that way. Once he'd started dribbling by a couple of players, he just thought, "Well, I turn that way. Well, I turn that way." But it was a mad sort of style he had about him. But I think Silla was that bad for us over the piece. I mean, he was never going to be a first team starter week in, week out, was he, Kev? You know what I mean?
There was a lot of. I mean, what was his best position? If you were playing him on the right hand side, you had Didier at gaff, so he wasn't going to get a game there. If you played him up front, Martin O'Neill actually says that he saw him playing behind the two strikers, and we're going to get to that later on. Martin O'Neill says he saw him playing behind the two strikers. I think he was like a snake in a sack. It was like a snake in a sack, eh? He didn't care where he was going to go. No, I need to watch what I'm saying, eh? So he didn't care what he was going to do with the ball, but it was. Henrik Larsson that night as well, before Silla scored in the 88th minute, Henrik Larsson missed a penalty as well.
That's right.
In that game, eh? He had it straight down the middle, and the keeper's hit the keeper's leg. Now that was the second penalty kick Henrik had missed for Celtic in a European tie in a row, because he had missed the penalty kick. They missed the penalty kick in the shootout against Valencia as well, and he would also go on to miss one later on in the season against Boa Vista at home.
That's right.
Penalty kick. So you're going, Henrik Larsson, for being an utter best player I've ever seen playing for Celtic. There was a couple of times where, when you actually look back at these two legs, he missed quite a few guilty chances, and especially in the away leg. And Basel was not his best European game for Celtic anyway.
No, I think that's fair. Just to touch on the Henrik's misses, I think that's what made. He was so relatable, though. He was one of these guys, even though you knew he's like a god, he was one of those folk who you knew he wasn't invincible. He could miss penalties. He did miss the odd opportunity, but he was someone that nothing ever stopped Henrik. Do you know what I mean? Coming back for more. And that's what I love about him, you know, and for all the missed penalties and that, he's still the one who got the important goals into that UEFA Cup run against, you know, Blackburn, Liverpool, home legs, you know, obviously the semi-final, you know, the winner. I mean, he was one of those folk. It never stopped him. It never put him off. It just, if anything, I always used to find, you know, you hear all this nonsense about idiots like Morelos about, he plays on the edge, and when he's playing on the edge, he's better. Henrik Larsson, actually, I used to find, once he got a wee bit of a bee in his bonnet, once he got wound up about something, because he's an amazing temperament, but I used to think Henrik was better when he was just a wee bit cheesed off about something. And whether that be a miss by him, or whether that be something said by English media, or anything like that, I used to feel that Henrik Larsson was always at his best when he did play slightly on what his equivalent of the edge is. Do you know what I mean? I always used to think I used to bring it the best in him.
He always seemed to play better. If we go further on into this season, he always seemed to play better when he had a bit of anger, when he had something to prove.
That's what I'm trying to say.
See Blackburn, see the Boa Vista away leg after he had missed the penalty at Celtic Park.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly, Kev, because it's two examples of that there. One was his fault and he was wound up, one was other people doubting him and that wound him up, but you're spot on. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Zinco says in the comments, God, now that you say that, his penalties for a while were a bit dodgy. But at the end of that season, Alan Thompson was taking the penalties, and that didn't work out well for us either.
No.
I think they're still looking for that ball at Rugby Park, actually. I'm not 100% sure. So, 88th minute, I thought this goal had took us through. Momo Silla half volley. The place went absolutely ballistic. The place went mental. And it's a fantastic goal by Momo Silla.
Totally.
And it was one of those he's one of those that you're leaving the ground going, 2-goal comfort, brilliant. I fancy us to score across there because they'll need to come out a bit more. And at the back of the mind, it's a false arrogance, I reckon, I left the ground with that night, thinking back. I thought, we've got a 2-goal cushion. I fancy our chances to score. I mean, you've got Sutton and Larson up front. Of course you're going to fancy your chances to score. And we've got 2 goals. We've got a 2-goal cushion. I reckon that we could have got through. I was quite confident of getting through into the next round. And when you're looking at Silla that night, you're going, we could have a player there. We could have a guy who could contribute to that squad that season, because we wanted to get into the Champions League. We wanted to get into the Champions League. When you've got to remember, at this point, the Champions League had 2 group stages. So there was like 12 games. Yep. That you had to play.
You needed a squad, 100%.
So you were going to need your squad. And we went away going like that. Right, 2-goal advantage. This team's handy, but I reckon we've got the measure of them.
Do you know what? I remember thinking it was complete relief. I felt like we got away with one.
Do you think so?
I felt we'd got away with one by that last goal. I thought that papered over the cracks a bit, but like you, was confident now we've got the 2-goal cushion, we'll go there and we'll be jamming. Do you know what I mean? I did think that as well, but I've got to be honest, I remember that game, it was like you said, there was just a few shaky moments through it where you thought, this isn't going. And again, maybe it's tempered with the fact, though, that you had such an expectancy. You were so expected, we were expecting 3-0, let's be honest, and a comfortable night's work. And to got the 3-1, I remember at the time, I was about 14, just approaching 15, and thinking at that age, going 3-1, right? We should be fine.
I'm getting what you're saying there. We got away with it, but we had the arrogance of how good that team was, the talent that we had in that side. What we were saying was, we can't be as bad again. Going away from home. So we're going to Switzerland in 2 weeks' time with a 2-goal lead. And you've got one of the best strikers in the world up front. We are going to score an away goal. And I remember being extremely confident on the day of the game. And this is a funny thing. These 2 ties weren't shown. Nowadays, these ties would have been shown on BT Sport. Celtic TV showed both of these ties. You had to subscribe to Celtic TV, and it was on the Sky platform. So it was.
I'm sure one was on BBC.
I'm positive. The away leg was definitely on Celtic TV. It was definitely on Celtic TV because Celtic made a big deal about buying the rights for this away game, and you had to subscribe because Celtic had showed quite a few pre-season friendlies on. You used to get it through a Sky channel. I think I can even remember the Sky channel. It was Sky Channel 435. That was the Celtic TV channel, and so you subscribed on it. You pressed your wee red button, and it took it off your. It took it off your bank, and that was it. And so I remember getting all the lads down, and my family, my dad, and all of that down to the house to watch the second leg, thinking, here we go, we're going to get into the Champions League again. This is where we want to be. This is going to be great. Now, just when I was hanging that there, Celtic had announced that they had signed a travel partnership with 67 Travel, and I used to go to the European away games in this time, so in my head, I always remember I never paid more than £200 for a day trip or an overnight stay, right? I think it was with Harry Hines or whoever it was. So the official trip with Celtic, with 67 Travel, I'll split it up here, £365 for an overnight stay. And I was going, that's extortionate. That's absolutely extortionate.
Is that flinging in a day at the Alps as well? What's the score there?
What does it say? 2 days, 1 night, 3-star accommodations, transfers plus match ticket. Now, Celtic only had 800 tickets that night. So there would have been a lot of guys who that would have been their only reason to actually get a ticket. What's even funnier, just now I've actually seen that, is the Celtic View have got a wee thing where they've got youth development roll of honour. That's a bit strange, eh? Anyway.
I don't mind that, though. I don't mind that.
I just, when I looked at it, when I was putting that down there, I was like, roll of honour. There we go. So, we go to the away leg, and Martin O'Neill goes to a 4-4-2. Melby right back, Ulrich Rawson left back. We got absolutely slaughtered in the first half. We weren't at the races. We were 2-0 down after 22 minutes. We were all across the shop. And I remember sitting watching it going, what's happening here? But still having that confidence in ourselves. We've got Henrik Larsson. We're going to score.
One goal.
We're going to score. Larsson should have scored just after they scored their first. He had an easy chance with a header. Bobo Baldy should have scored just after we went 2-0 down. But we're going at half time, and you're like, we've still got 45 minutes left. 45 minutes, game's all square, we score, it's fine. At half time, Martin O'Neill brings on, who did he bring on? Let's have a look. So the team in the second leg, I never read the team. The team in the second leg were Douglas, Johan, Baldy, Hughes, Lawson. Guppy came on for him at half time.
Yeah.
Silla, John Hartson came on for Momo Silla in 71 minutes. Lennon, Lambert, who was taken off for Didier Agaff at half time as well, when Celtic went back to a 3-5-2. Petrov, Sutton and Henrik. So with the 4-4-2, so you would have Silla on the left-hand side, Petrov on the right. That's the way, I can't really remember it, but having a read of that team, that's the way I sort of worked it out. But the second half, we didn't batter them, but we completely controlled the game. We had chances. We had chances by Baldy, Larsson. Then you had the one in the final minute by Chris Sutton, who the curler at the back post, where it looked for all intents and purposes it was in, and you've ended up with that famous picture of Martin O'Neill on his knees as he watches it, as he actually watches the ball going. He watches the ball going by the post, and final whistle goes, and we're out the Champions League. And I remember going, "That's our season finished. That's our season finished."
Yep.
This was the only goal that we wanted. After having a taste of the Champions League, we wanted to get back into the Champions League. And I can remember being utterly gutted, probably more gutted than I have been this season, that we didn't get into the Champions League that season.
I agree with you. I think you make the point really well. I mean, what I love about the character of that team, though, and obviously that came from the manager first and foremost, but he also did sign a team of men then, Kev, do you know what I mean? And one thing that always happened, they always settled their scores. That's always felt about that team. They always settled their scores, and it's like that. Once they'd realised they'd blown an amazing opportunity, a kind draw, you have to say, on paper it was anyway. But what they did was that they just got the bit between their teeth, didn't they? And we all know what happened on the road to Seville after that, you know, and that was very much like, remember that season, we lost the league obviously on the last day, and then the next year we won it by like 20 points because we always, like, it was like we were so determined because they'd lost it that year before it was the next season. Just when I was just punishing everyone, do you know what I mean? Taking it out on it was such a great way to channel. That team had such an amazing way of channeling its inner frustrations or inner anger at, you know, at knockbacks and setbacks that they went through. And, you know, the Basel or the Bal result, you know, was obviously, as you said, I couldn't agree more. It was like, what's going on here? This is a disaster. But it was the catalyst in pushing these guys on to levels we've not seen since in Europe.
It's a great point, and we're probably doing Basel a bit of disservice here, because Basel got drawn into a group with Liverpool, Valencia and Spartak Moscow and finished second in the group behind Valencia and knocked out Liverpool and ended up and ended up getting into the next group stage. In the next group stage, they faced Man United, Juve and Deportivo. Man United and Juve qualified for the group, but Basel still got 7 points in their second group stage, and with 3 teams from three big leagues in Europe. They were a decent side.
So the key question is, Kev, flip it. Celtic do qualify and are in those groups at that time. How would they have done?
We're beating Liverpool. I mean, we bet them later on in the season. So we're beating Liverpool.
We've actually got that's an evidence-based answer.
That's an evidence-based answer. Well, we'd already faced Valencia in the February before and had bet them at Celtic Park. And
we were more than a match for them, I felt.
We were more than a match for them. We would have had a good chance of getting out that group. When you get to the next one and you've got Man United, Juve and Deportivo,
I'd have fancied us.
Would you?
Honest truth. I think that season, those guys are just, they were just all at the right age as well. They weren't like 28, 29, you know, when people talk about coming into their peak. A lot of that squad were 30, 31, 32, some of them, and they were so streetwise. And they were also still at a level where the legs hadn't remotely gone at all. I can't think of any of them that I had. They were all in great nick for that age, streetwise, and they all played for each other. I just think it's just a wee what if, and we like a rabbit hole on this show, Kev. You know that yourself. So
definitely,
just interesting if you flip the scenarios. Could Celtic actually go out of those two? And I tell you what, Celtic qualifying for the last 16 under Strachan twice wouldn't have came close to if we'd got out 2 groups, I think, in the Champions League. For me, that's an unbelievable achievement to do it over 12 games at that level. You know, that's a real acid test.
Having to play 12 games in the Champions League is a strain on any squad, and I think we might have paid the price. I think the 12 games might have been too much for the team to get out the 2 group stages at that side. But then,
I think Momo Sylla would have been ripping up the Premier League, mate. You know it.
Oh, I don't want to. Well, let's talk about Momo. I mean, he played really well in the first game against Basel. He got man of the match in the quarter-final against Liverpool at Anfield.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew that was coming.
So the big fella done well for us. I'm going to ask you a question though. I'm not going to actually rewind back to that night in Switzerland. Do you know who the referee was?
Swedish?
He was, yes. He was Swedish.
Hair slightly blonder than mine?
Yes, he was. And Andras Frisk was...
Yeah, he was like the rival to Kalina, wasn't he? In terms of they were the 2 big names, weren't they?
The celebrity referees.
That's a good way of putting it.
The celebrity refs. He never gave us a penalty kick that night when the Basel defender handled the ball in the box. The Basel defender collapsed in the box and put his hand on the ball. We should have got a penalty kick that night. And I've never liked Andras Frisk since that. Kalina was always the better ref.
Oh, aye, 100%. By miles, absolutely.
You would have crapped yourself with Kalina, eh? If you with that stare.
100%.
Another strange fact, which links to the modern day Celtic.
Okay.
Christian Gross was the manager of Basel that night, failed Tottenham manager. He's
Ramon Vega's manager.
Ramon Vegan's manager as well, yes. He recently got a job after a long time out of football with Schalke. And he's recently been sacked by Schalke. And who's going to take over at Schalke?
Ralph Rangnick.
A name that a lot of the Celtic fans have been wanting as Celtic manager. Now, Schalke are doomed. They're going to the Bundesliga 2 next year. There's no way anybody's saving them. And it's a case of what if, eh? Have we asked Rangnick the question? Or Schalke are a massive club. Let's not kid ourselves on here. No. Even though they're going to be in the Bundesliga 2, Schalke are a massive club, massive backing, massive fan base. So for somebody that's been based in Germany, it could be a no-brainer. Maybe he always knew he was going to get that role at Schalke. Maybe we'll have asked the question.
I definitely think that if he's took the job at Schalke, though, then he's definitely open to a variety of challenges and isn't someone who's just got a stereotyping club that he sees himself being at, or a certain level, shall we say, or, in a certain league. I think it's all the more frustrating if he's went there and we've no asked the question, because he seems to me, if he's willing, although I'm not sure if Paul John Dyke's coached us today on a Celtic State of Mind, by the way. Apparently it might not be happening now, but anyway. But if it does happen, there we go.
Oh, there he is. He's came in. Schalke has
I thought he'd just done like that today. But I think if he is to get that job, then definitely it would give you an insight into what he's like in terms of his approachability. And I think certainly he may well have been someone that was more within our grasp than we maybe believed. I don't know. If we have asked him the question, he's chose Schalke, fair enough though.
I would like to think that we had asked him the question. We'll never know if we asked him the question unless he came out and says it. No. But we'll move on for that ball game. But one question. I mean, we could talk about the Seville, and we probably will do a Seville run special at one point. Would you swap beating Ball for what happened?
No.
No, you wouldn't, If somebody would have told you when that final whistle went and Ball what was going to happen, you would have went, I'm happy with that. You would have been happy with that. Eh? And it's a strange what if, because when you says, imagine going into a group with Valencia, Liverpool, then going into a group with Juve and Man United. That would have been great. But then we wouldn't have had Blackburn, we wouldn't have had Boa Vista, we wouldn't have had Stuttgart, we wouldn't have had 80,000 fans in Seville. So it's difficult, but I'm like you. I wouldn't change it in the world. No,
but what I would say, just for balance, and I don't think any Celtic fan would change that amazing time, for anything. If that means taking a defeat over 2 legs to Ball, then it's a small price to pay for what happened. But the only thing I would flip it with is, who was stopping us in Europe that year, The only team that stopped us was the team that became European champions themselves the year later. That's it, that speaks volumes. I know maybe the quality of, we played some strong teams. I think Celtic that year in Europe, the Ball result went against the grain. I think we could have made a big dent in that Champions League that year as well. But no, I wouldn't swap it, no. But I don't think it would have been doom and gloom if we'd qualified for the Champions League either. I think it could have been a really quite exciting time.
Not equally, but it's one of these things that you're glad that it happened. Really.
It's the smallest price to pay, if you know what I mean.
Aye.
A defeat over 2 legs on aggregate, and you pay that price and you get just what was just such a memorable, incredible season.
The way I think about it was, I remember sitting at my work's desk at the office, being utterly depressed the day after we got put out with Ball. Then I remember the morning after Boa Vista trying to book flights to Seville, and the 2 different emotions sitting at the same desk was unbelievable. And I never want to forget that. I never want to forget that feeling, and that's why we watch football, to get those sort of feelings. In the Celtic view as well, obviously, Lubo. We spoke about Lubo at quite great length a week ago. Lubo retired, and everybody was going, who's going to replace Lubo? So Martin O'Neill, in this interview in the Celtic View here, says there was already 3 guys in the Celtic squad who could possibly replace Lubo Moravcik. One was Momo Silla, who we've already spoke about. Martin says that he saw him, even though he was playing at right wing back, he saw him behind the 2 strikers. Now, second was Sean Maloney, who at that point was breaking into the team. He was, as soon as he broke into the side, he was deemed the sorcerer's apprentice because he was a wee hobbit-like, kind of the same sort of diminutive stature as Lubo. And another player that Martin O'Neill fancied in that role, we had signed for Livingston that summer, David Fernandez. David Fernandez is one of the guys who, he always looked to me like that wee tubby boy at school who didn't ken who his dad was.
Because he's in the wrong movie.
He didn't know. He just looked out of place wherever he went. I mean, we may as well start off with David Fernandez. I mean, David Fernandez signed for Airdrie when Steve Archibald was the manager at Airdrie.
Yep. There was Garcia San Juan, Calderon. There's a few of them.
Aye. So, obviously, having Steve Archibald as your manager and all these Spaniards turning up, no one of them were liquidated. No one of them got into financial bother. So Fernandez ended up going to Livingston, and in Livingston's debut season in the Premier League, he scored quite a few goals, and Celtic signed him on the same day that they signed Marcus Hedman and Ulrik Larsson. So that was, so Celtic signed him for £1 million. So that's quite a big signing, eh? It never really happened for him. If you look at the players that were in front of him, you had Larsson, Sutton, Hartson all in front of him. The midfield, you had Lennon, Lambert, Petrov all in front of him. And he just didn't really seem to take off. Now, I think he was talented. I think he had ability. I think you saw that at Livingston. But I never really thought he was Celtic's class.
I think he was one of those players that was needed to be the talisman of his team. The Maverick. I think his actual natural gifted ability was outstanding, to be fair. I think he had all the techers, and I'm sure in training he did some things that would have made them all sort of sit back and take notice. But to be in that Celtic team at that time, it took so much more than that. You had to really be part of the ethos that the rest of those guys had, and for me, a lot of that came down to graft. A lot of it came down to brute, strength, desire, and all the stuff Stephen Presley talks about, to be fair. But a lot of the characteristics and the makeup of that team, I don't think David Fernandez had. But I think he had ability, yes. But I think he had to be the main man at what team he was at. Certainly not someone who was in and out, because I agree with you. I'm not saying he was unfit, but he certainly looked like he was probably, maybe not as match sharp as the rest, to say the least. But I mean, definitely, in terms of natural ability, I'm sure it was quite a coup they got him. I can't remember whose youth side he set up, but I should have checked that out, because
Deportivo.
It was Deportivo. I knew it was one of them, and they were at that time, though, remember, did they not win the Champions League one year? Although they won La Liga, I beg your pardon, in 2001, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he came from a good school. Do you know what I mean? A proper good school.
He did that, and Stuart Horan actually says overall good player. He never seemed like, as you talk about the personality in that dressing room. He didn't seem like the type of guy who would have the personality to stand out in that dressing room.
No.
As proved, when he got a UEFA Cup runners-up medal, he was on the bench that night in Seville, and that summer we actually loaned him back to Livingston. He then went to Dundee United and Kilmarnock, and he scored against us. He scored 5 goals for Dundee United, and I'm sure 2 of them were against us at Celtic Park when Dundee United beat us. I probably should have checked that. Do you know what he's doing now?
Oh no, I love this stuff. I love when you do this. Go for it.
He's a scout for Manchester City.
You're joking.
Nope. He's been a scout for Manchester City since 2012, since he gave up playing. So there you go. There's another Man City connection, as we spoke about many Man City connections yesterday.
I should have got that, eh?
He's a scout for Manchester City. So that's us got Paddy Vieira, Craig Bellamy and David Fernandez as head scout. We've got it sorted, man. We've got it sorted. So we'll go back to Momo Silla, who was another one earmarked to play that role. Silla was raised in Paris, and you ken he's been capped for both the Ivory Coast and Guinea. He played both, yes. He played half a dozen times for the Ivory Coast and friendlies, then played competitively for Guinea.
For Guinea, aye. Yep. I didn't know that.
So we signed him in 2001 for St Johnstone. I remember him. It was a bit like Fernandez at St Johnstone. Well, it was Fernandez at Livingston.
He was
St Johnstone. He was the man. He was the main man. When you watched him on the telly, he stood out like a sore thumb as being the shining light in the dung heap that was round about him. And he was fantastic. At this time, when we're talking about that time in August, he was in a rich vein of form for us. He was in a fantastic vein of form. So it makes you wonder, where did it all go wrong? But as some people in the comments have already says, one week he was a 10 out of 10. Next week he was a 1 out of 10. He seemed to come on like League Cup games when O'Neill was rotating the squad, and he would always do well, but he just could never get into the. Again, it's the quality of the first 11 in front of him. Yep. And a lot of these players, we remember them as hits or misses, but then they weren't getting the run on the side basically because of the quality that was there in that first 11.
And I think Martin O'Neill was very rigid as well in terms of that. He wasn't wanting to make 4 or 5 changes for a league game and stuff. You know, he was very, and I'm sure there's examples of where he did, but my memory of him anyway was O'Neill had his favourites, if you want to call it that, but justifiably so, by the way, in a lot of their cases. It was a really, really tough nut to crack to get into that team back then. It really was. And for Momo Silla going up against someone like Didier Agat, who Martin O'Neill's, as I touched on earlier, was quoting at the £29 million price tag and stuff like that on his head. I mean, it's going to be tricky. That if O'Neill's rating you that highly, and I'm sure there was one, his tongue was in his cheek, but it was also an insight into just how good a player Martin O'Neill thought Didier Agat was. For Momo Silla to really take that place on regularly from Didier Agat would have took a colossal effort, I think.
Definitely, and he always seemed a bit of a loose cannon. Kevin Banks in the comments says, I always remember the footage of Momo when he was in court for speeding or something, and he swaggered into the court wearing a shirt with Public Enemy on it, with the Public Enemy logo on it. It would suit a Celtic State of Mind. We should try and get him on for a wee interview. Actually, I think Momo would have. Did he not get? I know he got racially abused at Aberdeen. In the game before the Basel game, but did he not get racially abused at St Johnstone as well when he played for Celtic, and that ended up at court? I'm not 100% sure. That could have been. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I might be wrong. But I liked Momo. He just didn't. He was never getting in that side. He left us and, strangely enough, went to Leicester.
That's right.
When Craig Levine took, I think he took Rab Douglas and Momo Silla to Leicester from us as well, and he ended up going back to St Johnstone, and I didn't ken what he's doing now. He's maybe working for Man City in some sort of capacity.
Probably.
If anybody in the comments can tell us what Momo Silla's doing now, let us know. Now, the third one that Martin spoke up in this article was Sean Maloney. Maloney broke into O'Neill's side at that point, but again, he had the same problem as Fernandez and Silla. The number of bodies in front of him, the number of good players in front of him. to try and get into this side. But I think it was noticeable from early on that Maloney was a better player than Silla and Fernandes, without a doubt. He had the talent, but all three of these players are no Martin O'Neill type players, eh?
That's true.
When you actually think about it. They're not Martin O'Neill type players when you look at O'Neill's Leicester side and the first 11 at Celtic. And I think that didn't benefit Maloney when he was trying to get game time as a young teenager breaking into the squad as well. What was your... Obviously, everybody remembers Maloney coming on at Ibrox and you're going, who's this wee guy? But for me, I always remember Sean Maloney, Gordon Strachan's first season. That's when Maloney really came into his own. And by that point, he's 21, 22. O'Neill, he had got a bad cruciate ligament injury in 2004 and basically missed a year, and Celtic gave him a 3-year contract. He came back for Gordon Strachan, and you've got to remember, everybody thought Gordon Strachan. Everybody thought Maloney was either going to go to Aberdeen or Livingston before he impressed Gordon Strachan in training.
That's right.
And that season, he became the player and the young player of the year in Scotland. For me, that's peak Sean Maloney before his injuries got hold. He came on in the Seville season. He scored against Stuttgart in that Seville run.
That's my first memory of him.
He scored against Stuttgart. He came on in extra time in Seville and blundered a free kick over the bar. So this is really weird. Those three players have all got runners-up medal for Seville. You wouldn't think that,
It's not bad going, is it?
That's no bad going for guys who, especially under O'Neill, didn't really do much. I loved Maloney as a player. I always knew Sean Maloney was a football. He had a touch, and the way that he had, the way that he could, an eye for goal, an eye for a pass. He was always
play with his head, eh? He was smart.
He was football intelligence, and I remember being utterly gutted when he, strangely, bizarrely, after the way he was treated with Martin O'Neill for 5 years, joined Martin O'Neill at Aston Villa for £1 million.
I know.
I remember that move going, he never played you. Why are you going to...
Play again.
Why are you going down to a manager who struggles to fit you in his side? Which for me. He soon came back. And maybe it shows you how no bad Celtic were run at that point, eh? But we sold him for £1 million and bought him back for 2.8.
Madness, eh? That is madness, Kev.
That is absolute madness. Again, Sean's career followed a strange path. The same path. Broke into the side, done well, got injured. Came back from injury. Started the season, done well, got injured. Came back from injury. Started the next season. Started brilliantly, got injured. Came back from injury. And he'd done that under Gordon Strachan twice, Mowbray and Lennon. Then it was basically Neil Lennon replaced him with Chris Commons because the injuries. I think Maloney, I know Laura, who contributes to the site as well, she doesn't like the way Maloney left us for Aston Villa. I don't think I've really got I like the fact that he came back. He was such a talented player, and he scored one of the best goals I've seen, one of the best Scotland goals I've seen at Celtic Park, Scotland against Ireland. Absolute peachy goal. What's your memories of Sean?
I mean, my first memory was always, I think when you look back as well with the O'Neill thing, it's quite interesting, Kev, what you're saying there about he struggled to fit him in. My memory growing up was Maloney was very much post-choice striker. Now, for me, Sean Maloney is not a striker. When you think of all the years that panned out after that, Sean Maloney was not an out-and-out striker, but that was the only way O'Neill could obviously get him. But O'Neill obviously did rate him, because you talk about that goal against Stuttgart. I know I mentioned it the other week. I said, I think he had a bit, that's where I thought he's got a bit about him. But Martin O'Neill, at that point, had spent £1 million on David Fernandes. Martin O'Neill was playing, could have easily brought someone else into the midfield and just had, or played just played Sutton and Hartson up front, and then like someone else in the hole. Do you know what I mean? But instead, he went for Maloney as a forward, and we were all worried. And he scored. And I think that showed that as much as O'Neill maybe we're struggling from the outside to see if he liked him or he rated him or he played him a lot. Actually, there must have been a bit of a bond there between the two of them, because, you know, for him to go to Villa, there must have been. And then there is wee hints and examples like Stuttgart in particular for me, where you go, well, he did rate him because that was his go-to guy when Henrik was out. You know, he picked Sean Maloney for what was a crunch game at that stage, because we knew we're doing all right here, we're in with a chance. That was an unlike O'Neill risk to take unless he, you know, had convictions that, no, Sean Maloney will be able to do it against them. But yeah, I think he evolved as a player, didn't he? I didn't think the striker role, he's not an out-and-out, he's not a number 9, is he? Let's be honest. It's not his position. He's someone for me that I think was more creative than a finisher. But I've got the Scotland goal does stand out as well. I'm glad that you put that one up there. But I actually think did he not win the FA Cup with Wigan?
He did win the FA Cup with Wigan, yes.
He had a really good spell there as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when he came back for his second spell, you've got to be honest, we were excited when he was coming back. Because you knew that whatever experience he had doing there at Aston Villa, he was going to come back a better player for it. And he was one of the sort of headline signings that summer.
He won the FA Cup with Wigan, but I'm also sure, did he not play in the FA Cup final with Hull City as well? I might be wrong there.
Very good.
I might be wrong there, but I
think you've got a shout there. Because
he went to America, then he came back and played for Hull City. He seems a very sporty guy. Obviously, he's got a high-rated job with Belgium now. He also played cricket and tennis to quite a high level as well. And he used to play tennis with Andy Murray, when he was a young lad. So that shows you the level of all-round sporting ability that he has. It'll be interesting to see if he's got any part to play in Celtic's immediate future. Celtic Rambler on the comments says Mo Silla runs an English-based soap company these days. I don't know whether that's true or not. I think it would be. Hopefully it is true, because that would be quite an interesting angle to get an interview with him. Russell, it's 56 minutes and we need to start talking about music. 56 minutes. We've done it again. We've done it again. So, right. On the week of the 11th of August, that's when the charts were out on the first Basel game. So I've based this on the first Basel game. At number 1 in the hit parade, we'll go smashy and nicey here. And number 1 in the hit parade was Colourblind by Bearsden's best crooner since Frank Sinatra, Darius. What reality show did Darius win?
None.
Or what one was he in?
He was on 2.
Was he in 2?
He got rejected.
He got
rejected for one, and then he went on the other one. I remember it at the time, man. So I think he'd been on Fame Academy, and then I think he went on to Pop Idol. I think he came 3rd or 4th in Pop Idol.
Was Pop Idol no called Pop Stars at that point?
Don't think so, man.
I don't. Anyway, whatever one that he went on, he finished behind Will Young and Gareth Gates. Whatever one it was.
He was 3rd. Aye, Pop Idol.
Right. So that was number 1 in the charts. At number 10 in the charts is a song which didn't actually make much of a dent on me at the time, but 2002, so 14 years later, actually made a dent on me. It was Scooter with a Logical Song.
Brilliant.
So obviously, the Logical Song became absolutely famous when the Green Brigade turned it in the Scotty Sinclair song.
Yes.
So I was just looking at that going, the Logical Song. That's one of the Green Brigade's finest moments, coming up with that song for Scotty Sinclair.
And I think we're getting told he was on Pop Stars and Pop Idol. We were both half right, Kev. It wouldn't have done much for our street credit if we were both spot on, would it?
I thought that was the same programme. Maybe 100%. I thought it was the same programme. So, in the album charts, Ewan Boy Martin says, wasn't Darius a Celtic fan? Google didn't tell me that. Google hasn't told me who he supports, because I did actually have a look to see who he did. But he's from Bearsden, so I think we've probably got to actually say he was maybe a Partick Thistle fan. Or he would maybe a claim to be a Partick Thistle fan. You ken what I mean? So he doesn't split the divide in Glasgow.
Aye, I get it.
And can we really? He's a Broadway star now. He's a big theatre guy now. Mm-hmm. He does all the musicals and all that. Anyway, move on for Darius. Move on. The albums, number one albums. The number one album was By the Way by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Do you like the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Liked them, and then I seen them at Teen the Park. Nah, terrible. They were awful at Teen the Park. But in fairness, I mean, no, in fact, there was no excuse. They were honest. They were just dross. I think they headlined it one year. The girl pal of mine at the time, her dad worked for like the Sunday Mail or something, so we got like hospitality tickets this year, which was class, man. You know what I mean? Like, it was amazing. Like, but that, you know, we were young, 2005. It must be 2006 or 7 when I don't know what year the Chili Peppers made. I'm just chucking years out there. Whatever year they played, anyway. And that was the only band. Basically, I got a free rein that whole weekend to take her to whoever I wanted to go see. She was cool with that. She was like, nah, your tunes are fine. And then she goes, but I want to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and dross. Absolute dross. But, I mean, obviously, if they come on the radio and that, a few good songs. By the Way, obviously, was that album. Is that the one that's got Can't Stop on it as well?
I don't know.
It was a tune. But I mean, one of those bands that they seem to have like a sort of second coming in the mid-2000s, didn't they? They went actually, you know, really, really mainstream popular again, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I suppose, they're one of those bands that I think if you put on, you know, 5 songs for that era that they had that were top 10 hits, you'd go, hey, that sound, it's not like, I'm going to put it on, you know, put it on when I get home and that, but I think it's, well, you know, good enough tunes.
I think one of the songs I remember for that time was Roller Coaster, and I think that was for a film. If I can, was that no for the Simpsons film or something like that? We're getting completely mixed up there.
I've got no idea, man.
I've got no idea either. In the comments, before we go into your album, in the comments there's been a lot of love for Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol. Which came out in August 2002. Yeah. Now, this is now one of my favourite albums of all time, but I must admit, in 2002, wow, this passed me by. And I only got into Interpol over the last couple of years because I started getting into Scottish bands, the last 10 years. Zinko's right, it was Beavis and Butthead that done Roller Coaster, it wasn't the Simpsons.
Roller Coaster of Love, that's what I was thinking in my head. I didn't want to say anything. So the Turn on the Bright Lights, over the last 10 years, I've got really into the Twilight Sad and that. And I read an interview with the singer for the Twilight Sad, and he says Interpol were a massive influence on him. So I went back and listened to them. And for a band that come from Manhattan, they sounded like they came from Scotland. They've got that sort of sound that the Cocteau Twins had, and like when you listen to bands like the Twilight Sad and Frightened Rabbit and that, you can see the Interpol influence in them. Wow. But because I had actually listened to the Twilight Sad first, when I listen to Interpol, I can actually hear a Scottish band. Basically, Interpol were influenced by the Cocteau Twins. Do you know who the Cocteau Twins are? Is that before your time? Aye. No, I know who they are. I've got one of their tunes on my Spotify. Can't remember the name of it now, but it's good. Fantastic band for Grangemouth. Obviously, Grangemouth's got its own global ecosystem because of the chemical works there. So there must be something in the air. It never snows in Grangemouth because it's too warm. So I never got into that album until the last 5 or 6 years. So when we were picking albums for this, I says I need to mention that album. It's a fantastic album, and if anybody's watching this hasn't went to listen to this, or hasn't listened to any of the Interpol stuff, go and do it.
It's fantastic. Right. You're not going to be disappointed.
Sound.
I'm going to... So what's your album from that week or was in the charts at that time?
So my album is a bit of an obvious one, but there's a bit of a connection there for me, Kev. So it's Queen's Greatest Hits 1, 2 and 3 was released, the big silver compilation. But like, my dad brought me up on Queen in the 90s, do you know what I mean? That was Saturday nights. It would just be like me picking what Queen VHS I wanted on. Tended to be Greatest Hits 2 every time. Like, didn't get me wrong, I just picked the same one because I was young and stupid. But I don't know, it was just one of those bands that I knew all their songs by the time, you know, I'd left primary school. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those, I don't know, it was just one of those bands. And I think when I look back, that was like my dad's favourite band. Obviously, he's not here now and all that, Kev. It's a shame and stuff. And I just think, as a wee doff of the cap to him, I thought I would be letting the team down if I didn't pick Queen's Greatest Hits 1, 2 and 3. So I had to do that, man.
What's your favourite Queen song?
Favourite Queen song's difficult. So there's a couple. I think Under Pressure with David Bowie. I think there's a lot of relief with that song as well, purely because thank God it was good. Thank God it wasn't the Frog song, you know what I mean? And I think the other one that I really like is Hammer to Fall. I think that's good rock and roll track. Aye, loads of good songs though. Loads of good songs.
What did you think of the Queen film that was released a couple of years ago?
I thought Brian May and Roger Taylor had a lot more say-so in that storyline than what was actually more likely the reality. And there was wee bits that they added in. I thought, you know, because obviously I've watched loads of documentaries about them and stuff. And there's just no way like, there was a wee silly bit, which I don't know why it annoyed me, Kev, but it did, right? And they were in the recording studio or whatever. I think it was ahead of reuniting for the Live Aid gig. And they hadn't spoke for 2 years or whatever. And there's just this silly, needless bit in the film where they send Freddie Mercury out the room. And it goes to Brian May and he went, why'd you do that? He goes, I just felt like it. Because obviously Freddie Mercury was meant to be coming back all humble and really sorry for how rude he'd been and stuff. And I just thought, as if that happened. Who are you trying to kid? They got tell to both. Honestly, there's just no way that happened. And I just thought, you know, you're trying to rewrite it a wee bit so you don't look like, you know, you are pushed about maybe as much. But at the end of the day, there was only one Freddie Mercury. He was the dominant force. And there was nobody putting him out the room to stand outside like a naughty girl because Brian May felt like it. I just thought stuff like that there was no need for. That was just them protecting their own egos. And I kind of respect John Deacon for the fact that he went, I'll do the tribute gig. And then he went, after that, that's it. No Freddie, no Queen for me. He says, it'll never be the same. There's no point in kidding on that it will be. I always admired that, you know, about, I mean, as much as I don't take anything away from them carrying on, because that's all they know. They've earned the right to play live. Of course they have. There's no two ways about it, but I think to try and replace an unstoppable force like Freddie Mercury was never possible. But I know definitely. I mean, I've got a Freddie Mercury tattoo in my arm and that, man. I love him, so. Aye.
Wow. I was never a big Queen fan, but this will be before your time. But I remember watching them on Live Aid. And everybody, I was 9 at the time of Live Aid, and knowing that was something special at that point, even though I never went on to like the music. I just never. But I remember seeing going, that's quite special. I can actually see that guy's a performer and he's got something. Strangely enough, there was 3 bands in Live Aid who completely made a major impression on me. U2,
yeah,
The Who, and Status Quo, and I've seen all 3 of them live.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, yeah.
My album from that. Now, we spoke yesterday, and when I started having a look through the charts, there is a reason why, like, the Interpol album never came on my radar, because I could have chose 5 albums from this week. It was a great time for music for me. One of the albums was the Coral's debut album, The Coral, which is a fantastic album. Everybody who thought they were getting Dreaming of You, then get hit with reggae sea shanties about mermaids.
Did that have Simon Diamond on it or something like that as well?
No, it didn't. Not that one. Or did it?
Is it not?
Oh, I can't remember.
I thought it was on that. I could be wrong now. No, I know what you're saying. I mean, they were a band that I've seen them live a few times as well, Kevin. You know, I think definitely when they came out with Dreaming of You, it wasn't necessarily like this is how it's going to be going forward, but they're a good live band as well. I've seen them a few times, the Coral, funnily enough.
I've never actually seen them live, strangely enough, and I do like their back catalogue of work. I do like Bill Ryder Jones' solo stuff as well. That's a completely different direction for the Coral. The Coral. There's a lot of love coming in the comments for the Status Quo. I love Status Quo. I've said that before on this podcast. I love the Quo. So you had the Coral. You've got the Streets had original pirate material out at that time, which was an album I utterly played to death. Then you've got the two albums that I couldn't make up my mind about. You've got the last broadcast by Doves, one of the greatest albums of the 21st century, in my opinion. This should have made Doves the biggest band on the planet. For me, this album. There Goes the Fear, Words, what other songs? Pounding.
Aye. That was Pounding, I remember when it came out and being like, what's this? I need a bit more of that. And then, as you say, There Goes the Fear. That's the two that really stick out. And There Goes the Fear's brilliant melody. It's a bit Stone Rosy at times, to be fair, and it goes on too long. That song, There Goes the Fear, must go on for about 7 minutes.
I love the way it goes into the Rio Carnival bit, and that. I think that's fantastic. For me, that's a great album. I remember seeing them with my wife at tea in the park, and it was a Sunday night, and I think it was about 6 o'clock on the second stage on the Sunday night. And one of my many predictions that's never came true, I says that they would be headlining tea in the park the following year. They never, still haven't done it, but. For me, the reason that they haven't done it is because they look like bin men. They haven't got an image like Coldplay had. For me, they're
like
far better.
Screamacelica.
Aye, well,
they've not got an image like Screamacelica, mate. That's it. You know what I mean? It's all part of it. It's all part of it, Kev. That's the thing. See, for me, it is though. It is, mate. See, if you look at a band, you want to be them. I think. Do you know what I mean? You want to. Look at the back, he's cool. Like he's the man, you know what I mean? I think there's got to be a bit of that in it.
I think as well, you look at certain bands and you look at the frontmen and that, you could be like Doves. You have a look at, they had that look about them where you go, well, I can look like that if I want to, because it was a sort of everyman kind of look. And
nobody wants that. You want to be looking at someone and going, whoa. He looks out. This is my take on it. I suppose it's that, but mine would be like, he looks like a superstar. You know, would I get away with that, Jacob? That is generally how I would look at it. Eh?
So, are you trying to tell us you had a phase of looking like Freddie Mercury then when you were younger? Like, got a bit with the white vests and the bleached denims and all of that.
I've often contemplated the black and white leotard for the Celtic State of Mind on a Monday, man, but no, I'm not on it yet.
So. I've got the last broadcast by Doves, an utterly fantastic album, which I'll played to death round about that time. As soon as I started going back to this game, I had a wee Peugeot 206, and I remember listening to this album constantly the month it came out. And I'm going, that reminds me of getting beat off Basel. As soon as I saw it again, I'm like, I says, that reminds me of getting beat off Basel, that album. The first track on it, the intro then into Words, I think Words is one of the greatest songs that Doves have ever done. Also in the charts then, at number 9 was a Primal Scream with their new album, Evil Heat. And if everybody will be aware, if I've moved away, I'm a massive Primal Scream fan. I can't do that, right? I'll just leave that. I'm a massive Primal Scream fan. And Evil Heat was at their peak. Techno, punk, protest, psych, acid rock, krautrock's phase, and that's a fantastic, for me it's a brilliant album. Absolutely, they released 2 albums at the turn of the century, Exterminator and Evil Heat, Then an album after that, Live in Japan. Anybody that hasn't heard the Live in Japan album by the Primal Scream, go and listen to it. This is peak Primal Scream. Absolutely noisy Primal Scream. And for me,
do you call them the Primal Scream?
I could go, the Primal Scream.
No, I'm just interested. I thought that was maybe like...
I think it just depends. I think it just depends of how I'm flown, how I'm.
I like that. I've never heard that before. I was just interested.
How I'm hitting the bars, man. If I'm flown, I'll maybe actually say the Primal Scream.
The Primal Scream. I like that. There used to be a nightclub in Stirling called Dusk, and I used to always call it the Dusk. I thought it was called the Dusk because I was too old to be going there, really. I was like, are we going to the Dusk tonight? And my younger pals they were like, shut up, mate. It's not called the Dusk.
Well, you call it Dusk. It was the Rainbow Rocks and Maddie, mate.
Aye, the Rainbow Rock, aye.
I can still remember vaguely, and I didn't go into it at this point, but I remember being in Stirling when I think the Foo Bar was called Maxwell's 3D. Wow. I can remember seeing a sign for Maxwell's 3D who said I must have only been about 4 or 5 at the time. What is the name of your favourite Doves album, Kevin? It's either the last broadcast or the one that they've had out this year. The one that they had out last year. That's my 2 favourite Doves albums. The Universal one. I love Doves, I really do. I missed them when they played at the SWG3 last year, but I've got tickets to go and see them at the Barrowlands when they play at the Barras, if that ever happens. Which it looks like we Nicholas tell us that everything's going to be normal, but we're going to be in a intermediate post-COVID in June, so hopefully gigs will start happening, because I think I've got tickets to go and see the Primal Scream. I've got tickets to go and see the Primal Scream at the Bandstand in Glasgow, and also the Jesus and Mary Chain at the Bandstand in
David Kelly, very good though. Very good. The Primal Scream, did they liquidate and buy the old Primal Screams this way?
Well, I think if you probably asked the Primal Scream, you might find that they didn't own their own back catalogue. So that could be true. They probably had to liquidate themselves after. I think they did that. Because Moving On Up appeared on a insurance advert. And I remember the Primal Scream coming out and saying, we couldn't do nothing about that because we didn't own the rights to it.
Wow, okay, that's unusual.
It's a publishing company that owned the rights to it, but I don't know whether that's changed now.
Yeah, it's strange, eh?
Well, Russell, that's us been an hour and 16 minutes. I've enjoyed tonight. We've went back to Basel and we've dug into...
Loved it, man.
When I've actually started looking back, this was a really decent time for music, a really decent time for stuff that I still listen to this day, which is quite bizarre. So, Russell, thank you very much.
My pleasure, my man. My pleasure.
Everybody who's commented, everybody who's enjoyed this, please subscribe below. Share with your friends. Remember, don't take us too serious. Ant and Deck on Saturday Night Takeaway actually said they have the best minute of the week when they give away like prizes and free holidays and that. Me and Russell can't give away free holidays, but this is the best hour of the week that Celtic fans are having at this precise moment in time. So keep the faith, lads. Hail, hail, see you later.